Jessica Chobat was one of the driving forces behind Expedition X, bringing energy, mystery, and fearless investigation into the unknown. Fans believed she would be part of the team forever, but without warning, she stepped away. No big announcement, no explanation, only silence. Now, disturbing details are emerging from people close to production. What really happened behind the scenes? Tonight, we uncover the truth about Jessica's departure and the shocking reason the show may have crossed a line no one was prepared for. Before her exit became the subject of speculation and quiet industry conversations, Jessica Chobat was the pulse of Expedition X. She wasn't there just to narrate events or fill screen time, she shaped the identity of the show. Viewers trusted her because she brought something few investigators could: real curiosity and a calm willingness to walk into places that others refused. From day one, her role went beyond hosting. She acted as the voice of reason while still pushing forward into high-risk encounters, grounding each investigation with science-backed questions. While Phil Torres broke down data and patterns, Jessica humanized the search for answers, asking what ordinary people feared but never dared to speak publicly. Her background made her stand out. Before Expedition X, she spent years in investigative entertainment and story development, exploring the blurred line between fact and speculation. Her on-screen composure earned her respect from crew members who described her as the investigator who stayed last when everyone else packed up. Multiple production notes reveal that during Season 1, she was the only cast member to review 100% of post-investigation recordings personally. Even the uncut footage the network never aired. She often stayed in the command trailer long after others wrapped, replaying audio anomalies and unexplained radio bursts, frame by frame. According to one assistant producer, Jessica asked the kind of questions that could derail a narrative if answered truthfully, questions that made executives nervous. And that became part of the problem. Her dedication to uncovering whatever was actually happening, outside what could be marketed or packaged, made her indispensable, but also increasingly at odds with the show's evolving tone. As the series gained popularity, pressure increased to amplify the spectacle. Jessica remained committed to reality. She wanted truth, even if the truth didn't fit the script. Her value came from authenticity. Ironically, that authenticity may be what ultimately led her straight toward the breaking point. As Expedition X advanced in popularity, production began shifting. Episodes needed heightened stakes, faster pacing, and more dramatic moments to compete with other paranormal and expedition-style shows. What started as a truth-forward investigative series gradually leaned toward entertainment, something viewers never saw coming. According to confidential post-production notes and off-record crew accounts, Jessica Chobat began quietly resisting these changes. She believed Expedition X was losing what made it unique, its grounding in real investigation over exaggerated spectacle. Behind the cameras, conversations reportedly grew tense. Producers pushed for more reaction-based footage, while Jessica pushed back, arguing that authentic reactions shouldn't be manufactured. According to a crew member present during the Season 3 strategy meetings, Jessica flatly refused to reenact moments that did not occur naturally during filming. She is quoted saying, "If we start pretending, we're not exploring anymore, we're just performing." As ratings pressure grew, so did the distance between what she felt was right and what executives wanted delivered. Even field operations were affected. Multiple crew members confirmed that in certain high-risk investigations, Jessica questioned why the team was being pushed deeper or staying longer solely for potential dramatic payoff. She expressed concerns about safety standards being adjusted for screen tension. One field tech later disclosed she was the only one who stopped and asked whether we should go in, not just whether we could. That didn't sit well with people focused on the numbers rather than survival. Rumors began circulating that something more was bothering her. She would appear completely calm on camera, but off-screen became noticeably withdrawn before episodes involving intense or questionable investigative setup. She developed a habit of reviewing every safety protocol herself, often rechecking equipment without prompting. One crew member described it as someone preparing not just for an investigation, but for impact. The tension escalated when Jessica began raising direct concerns during executive review calls. She insisted that several anomalies shown publicly were misleading due to selective editing. The more she spoke up, the more isolated she became within the leadership structure. This wasn't just creative disagreement, it was the start of a revelation she was never supposed to share. According to multiple insider accounts, the breaking point began during the filming of an episode deep in the Pacific Northwest, one that was never aired in its original form. The team had traveled to investigate reported hauntings and electromagnetic disturbances linked to abandoned Cold War-era tunnels. The location had a history of structural collapses and unstable power sources, but executives reportedly pushed for extended filming after initial readings failed to produce dramatic results. Jessica argued strongly against pushing the team deeper, citing physical danger and lack of emergency support. Her concerns were dismissed as overly cautious. That night, the monitoring equipment began registering extreme magnetic fluctuation. Unlike previous investigations, these readings didn't match typical geological interference. Crew members reported sudden interference on radios, unexplained nausea, and what one technician described as the sensation of pressure all around us, like being underwater without drowning. Footage from the thermal camera, according to sources familiar with the uncut files, captured a moving distortion that could not be matched to any environmental source. Jessica insisted the team pull out and review the data before continuing. Production reportedly pushed to keep rolling. Moments later, a lighting rig collapsed. While no one sustained severe injury, 2 crew members were treated for dizziness and minor trauma. Chobat was said to be the first to respond, helping stabilize equipment and calling for immediate extraction. Official production logs labeled the incident as weather-related malfunction, but crew on-site claimed the air was perfectly still. It wasn't just the physical incident that shifted her perspective. It was what she saw in the unedited footage later that night. Sources say she stayed alone reviewing the thermal imaging, noticing something moving in sync with the equipment failure. She reportedly wrote in a field journal entry, "If this is real, we should not be here. If it's not, someone wants us to believe it is." Either possibility was disturbing. The next morning, she confronted production staff about altering the narrative of what happened. She argued that the episode should either be scrapped or presented exactly as it occurred, including crew risk. Executives refused. That was the moment, according to insiders, that Jessica made her decision. She wasn't just questioning safety anymore. She was questioning whether the truth was being deliberately compromised. And from that moment forward, the clock began ticking on her departure from Expedition X. After the tunnel incident, Jessica Chobat pushed for a full internal review of both the safety protocols and the narrative structure of the show. She insisted that the thermal footage, the strange physiological symptoms experienced by the crew, and the raw audio anomalies all be preserved as is. But when rough cuts for the episode began to circulate, she discovered that pivotal moments had been strategically removed. The unexplained fluctuation in equipment readings was trimmed to appear inconclusive. Crew reactions to the pressure event were shortened and repackaged as brief equipment malfunction. Entire audio segments, where Jessica openly expressed concern about an immediate evacuation, were cut completely. According to one post-production specialist who remained anonymous, Jessica showed up at the editing room unannounced, requesting to review cut logs. What she saw left her stunned. In the metadata, timestamps indicated that footage had been flagged for removal even before the final team debrief. Internal notations reportedly labeled these clips as overly alarming, non-usable, and potentially damaging to series tone. Some of the distortions caught on thermal were said to be set aside for secondary analysis, but never resurfaced. "It was as if the truth was archived," said the specialist quietly. "Not erased, just buried." When she brought the issue up in the following production meeting, her concerns were dismissed as unnecessary escalation. Executives allegedly argued that showing the incident in full could make the network look irresponsible or foster fear among viewers. Jessica's counterpoint struck a nerve. If what we're investigating is real, downplaying it is a lie. If it's not real, and we act like it is, that's worse. serious. Her words reportedly caused a long silence across the conference line. From that moment on, she was not just seen as cautious, but as a risk. Several crew members later confirmed that future scripts began subtly reducing her airtime during analytical segments. She was instructed to focus more on narration, while Phil Torres handled data-driven clarification. This restructuring was interpreted by some as an attempt to control how much of her skepticism made it onto camera. Word began spreading internally. Jessica was becoming too factual, too serious, and not in line with evolving direction. Behind closed doors, it was called a style shift, but according to those closest to her, she recognized it as something far more worrying. An effort to soften reality. She didn't leave because she stopped believing in the investigation. She left because the show stopped believing in the truth. In the months that followed the tunnel incident, the divide between Jessica Chobat and upper production widened beyond creative differences. According to internal messages referenced by a crew member, she repeatedly pushed for more transparency regarding field risks and for documentation to reflect the reality of what crews endured during extreme investigations. She warned that failure to report situations accurately could result in serious injury, or worse. Those concerns were quietly acknowledged but ultimately minimized for being overcautious and disruptive to episode pacing. Then something changed. Her concerns stopped being about filming and started focusing on people. While reviewing upcoming expedition plans for a season finale episode, supposedly centered around airborne luminescent phenomena in an uninhabited region of the Arctic Circle, she noticed serious safety compromises. The location was listed as mostly stable, yet the latest geological assessments noted deep fracturing beneath the ice shelf, unstable satellite communication zones, and high electromagnetic interference readings. Jessica flagged the excursion as a red-level risk. The response from leadership shocked her. One executive replied that heightened risk equals heightened viewership. That answer deeply disturbed her. She began privately confiding in close colleagues that the push for more dangerous footage had crossed a line. One crew medic later disclosed that during a routine equipment inspection, Jessica approached him and asked, "How long do we have to flatten a rescue if something happens out there?" Not in theory, in real time. How many minutes? When he answered, "Under optimal conditions, maybe 20. She reportedly responded with a single sentence, "The danger is not theoretical anymore." Weeks later, anonymous crew members claim Jessica started receiving brief, subtle administrative notes questioning her commitment to the show's vision. At first, simple reminders. Later, veiled phrasing about professional alignment and consistency with series objectives. To outsiders, it sounded harmless. To those familiar with production language, it was a warning. Then, it escalated. Ahead of a mid-season promotional shoot, Jessica was instructed to downplay prior concerns on camera and avoid addressing safety or authenticity-related issues in interviews. She pushed back, calmly but firmly. She wanted to talk about the importance of respecting both the history of paranormal inquiry and the people behind it. Reportedly, she was told that those themes were not currently a performance priority. That was when it became clear. Not only were her warnings being ignored, they were being actively suppressed. And once her advocacy for crew safety began interfering with planned expeditions, the internal stance shifted from disagreement to containment. For Jessica, that was no longer a creative difference. That was a line drawn in the sand. It didn't happen in a dramatic confrontation. There was no screaming, no ultimatums. The moment Jessica Chobat truly decided she couldn't stay on Expedition X came during a routine prep briefing at the Los Angeles production office. The team was reviewing logistics for the next major shoot, a multi-week investigation in a remote mountainous region where locals claimed unexplained ground tremors were linked to an abandoned Cold War communications facility. Jessica had already flagged concerns about seismic instability in the area, citing a recent geological survey that warned of potential structural collapse inside the facility. She also pushed for additional personnel, a second medic, a thermal imaging technician, and another safety coordinator. The production reply came back with a single line: "Budget won't support additional redundancy. Team must operate lean." During the briefing, one producer suggested using drones drones and remote cameras to avoid unnecessary entry into dangerous areas. Jessica agreed. But then another senior figure shut it down in front of everyone, saying, "It won't cut well for episode energy. We need real human proximity to the activity." Those in the room described that the air went still. Jessica didn't argue. She simply stared across the table for a moment, then slowly leaned forward and asked, "At what point does energy outweigh survival?" According to an insider, no one responded. Later that night, Jessica returned to her hotel and began quietly organizing essential files: early treatment documents, unreleased field reports, private notes from key investigations. She left a message for a high-level network liaison expressing her decision to pause involvement pending a full review of safety protocol and content approach. 2 days later, during an informal call, she made it official. She would step away from filming. She didn't give a dramatic speech. She simply said she could no longer stand behind an environment where verification and risk calculation were seen as obstacles rather than necessities. That call wasn't widely publicized, but internally, it landed like a seismic shift. Some crew members reportedly cried. Others, who had quietly raised similar concerns but felt powerless, described it as the moment someone finally stood up. A production assistant later recalled Jessica telling him, "There's bravery in chasing answers, but there's also bravery in refusing to ignore consequences." Shortly after, Jessica's departure was labeled a creative transition in public statements. But those who were there know better. She didn't walk away because she lost interest. She walked away because the mission changed. And the part of that mission she believed in, truth, caution, respect for forces we don't fully understand, was no longer driving the show's direction. Jessica Chobat didn't speak publicly right away. When her departure was first announced, headlines framed it as a career reprioritization or a shift toward new media ventures. The official press line said she was focusing on creative development, but people who worked alongside her say that behind the silence was something heavier, something she struggled with long after stepping away. It wasn't the physical risks alone that pushed her out. It was the direction investigations were taking and how far the production was increasingly willing to go to capture something, even when there was nothing left to capture safely. According to one editor who worked on late-season episodes, Jessica began pushing back against what she called pattern forcing. She noticed that sometimes, when field data didn't support the narrative the team expected, conversations would subtly shift toward filming more speculation than verification. She reportedly told a producer, "We are not supposed to create mystery. We are supposed to explore it." The response she got wasn't hostile, but it wasn't supportive either. It was neutral. The audience wants closure. In private, she described frustration with how post-production occasionally reshaped events. Instances where equipment malfunction was labeled as unexplained force. A night where wind rattled a door frame, but was edited to seem like intentional movement. Nothing fabricated outright, but just enough assisted ambiguity, as one crew member put it, to make the episode lean toward suspense over science. What troubled Jessica most wasn't dishonesty, it was the momentum behind it. Ratings pressure led decision-makers to push the boundaries of what qualified as evidence. In one internal review meeting, she questioned whether they were truly documenting phenomena or unintentionally dramatizing fear. The room reportedly went quiet before someone said, "It depends how you define documentation." That moment stuck with her, because to her, the definition hadn't changed. Following this, Jessica began consulting outside experts privately to confirm whether her observations aligned with responsible investigative practice. The consensus was clear. If hesitation exists due to ethics or safety, pause. Otherwise, you're not investigating, you're simply producing. That was the point she couldn't ignore. It wasn't that things got too strange, it was that things stopped being strange for the right reasons. She didn't leave because she was afraid of the unknown. She left because she was afraid of what would happen if they pretended to know more than they did. For months after leaving Expedition X, Jessica Chobat remained quiet. She didn't want her departure to ignite controversy or damage the show's legacy. She respected her colleagues, acknowledged the skill behind the production, and believed many people involved still cared about doing things right. But as rumors began circulating, claims that she'd left due to drama, arguments, or losing interest, she agreed to privately address a small group of industry insiders. What she revealed was simple, calm, and unsettling. She explained that there was a moment during one of their final shoots, a nighttime investigation in a structurally compromised mining complex, when camera operators were positioning inside a corridor that local experts had red-flagged due to collapse risk. She requested the team regroup outside until daylight. Instead, executives pushed to get just a few usable shots. While nothing catastrophic happened, a large sheet of metal dropped from overhead support minutes later, narrowly missing a crew member by less than 3 feet. She described the sound as the wake-up call I had been ignoring. It wasn't paranormal that nearly caused harm, it was negligence. She didn't name names. She didn't accuse anyone directly, but she made it very clear. Excellence in exploration cannot exist without responsibility. And when that responsibility is traded for shock value, even subtlety, the mission dilutes into spectacle. Her closing statement reportedly stunned the room. We don't chase answers to create fear. We chase answers because fear is often the first sign there's something worth understanding. Since then, insiders say Jessica has been quietly consulting on responsible production guidelines for high-risk nonfiction programming. She hasn't ruled out returning to TV, but only if the format prioritizes reality over dramatization, safety over spectacle, and truth over trend. She isn't exposing Expedition X to tear it down. She's reminding future explorers what happens when the mystery becomes more important than the people chasing it. And that, according to those closest to the show, is the real reason Jessica Chobat walked away.